Okay.
Let's begin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to BEPP July 1st guest speaking event. We have Dr. B here with us. Dr. B is a University of St. Augustine alumni. He is also a successful business owner. Went from being a mobile therapist to becoming a brick and mortar business owner currently with 5 employees, if I'm correct. And just within a short period of 2 years. So we're excited to have Dr. B here tonight to share his business experience with us and teach us how to negotiate the salary and as well as how to start your own private practice. Thank you, Dr. B.
Yes, thank you. So I do have a presentation I created. It's very brief, but I'll kind of like in preparation for this event, in building this presentation, it became really quickly evident to me how large this could have become, like how many dynamics and how many factors went into me starting my own practice and my own business. And even thinking back into like the strategies that I used before I became a business owner and trying to kind of elevate myself in the world of physical therapy as a new graduating from St. Augustine in Austin and wanting to immediately make an impact. And what that meant was doing job interviews, trying to negotiate a salary and put myself in a position where I can elevate in my career as quickly as possible. Knowing at some point I wanted to become a private practice owner, but more importantly, getting as much success and experience early on as I could was so vital and so important for me to finally make that jump into private practice. There's so much that I want to say. There's so much I want to get into, but I'm going to keep my presentation as simple as possible. I told Ian I was going to try to keep this to 30, 35 minutes if possible, because I want you guys to be able to ask questions about the specifics if you'd like to. And I want to give a little bit to kind of two parties, because I know we have people on here tonight who may not be interested at this point in time in opening up their own private practice. But I have a little kind of 5-rule plan that I laid out that I think is very important. I've shared with other people in the past about what you need to do to negotiate your salary, especially your first salary as soon as you graduate from PT school, because I'll speak more upon that once we get into the presentation. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And we'll just get right into it. I'm going to speak on 2 things tonight. First is we're going to talk about, I'm going to give it a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm going to keep that brief as well. It's relevant to some of the things I discuss or talk about whenever I started my own practice. So I'll just give you kind of a brief introduction of where I come from. And then we're going to talk about a few major points. If you're thinking or even remotely interested in starting your own practice, I'm going to give you some very baseline general information that you need to start with. So this presentation or this talk tonight is going to be very specific about a start, building a foundation, some of the things you have to think about early on in the process. Some of these things that I may have jumped past and realized later that because I didn't establish these foundations, it either hampered my ability to grow quicker or made it a little bit more challenging for me to be successful. I also want to make some room. I've created like this kind of 5-rule plan about things you need to think about, things you need to implement whenever you're going to discuss or negotiate your salary. This could be a salary after you've been practicing for several years, or this could be, more importantly, I think, your first job right out of PT school. I think a lot of us, when we graduate, feel very, I'm going to take the first job offer that comes my way, and if it feels like a good match, I'm just going to run with it. What you do to create yourself at the best advantageous position in regards to salary and other compensation type of measures, day one or your first job is going to be so important for how you grow exponentially. So we'll discuss that for a bit. And then at the end, we'll talk about just a couple take-home points, and then I will share with you something I've been working on for a long time. It's kind of a mentorship program that I'm hoping to launch very soon. So I'll kind of share you an idea of what that might look like as well. So I know some of my students that are here already have seen a lot of this on a slide before, but I am from Louisiana. I'm actually been hanging out. My mom and dad came visit for the entire month of June. Anytime I'm around my family for more than a few days, I start to adopt that Louisiana accent again. So you may hear that come out a little bit stronger than you probably heard it or witnessed it before. But I love where I'm from. I love South Louisiana. It's who I am. There's no doubt about it. It'll always be home to me. I don't feel like I'll ever move back. But it's so much of into who I am as a person and all the success that I've had. I can't help but mention it, that it's who I am. Right in the middle of the screen, you see a picture of my grandfather's feed and farm supply store. He has a business, a small business in Church Point, Louisiana, where I grew up. And in that store with that man, along with an uncle and other family members, because it's a family-run business, is where I learned a lot about work ethic, nothing about business, actually. But having that as part of my life and my upbringing, I worked there since my grandfather would come get me when I was 8, 9 years old out of bed to go work at the feed store and help him do some things. And I worked there until my mid-20s, until I actually started my college career. It's very important about who I am and the work ethic that has made me successful today. If you've, know anything about me, I am not the most brilliant person. I do tend to catch on to things pretty quickly, but I need it explained to me. My success that I have had so far in my professional ventures has little to do with my intelligence and a lot to do with my work ethic. And it's all because of that place right there, actually. I do have 2 careers, actually, before physical therapy. I was a firefighter for 10 years in South Louisiana, and I was a professional golfer for 2 years. I was a golf pro at a country club in South Louisiana. Both of those careers, again, have really influenced me and who I am today and who I am as a physical therapist. So I can't not do a presentation like this without mentioning those. Now, that was all prior to PT school. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college to undergrad until much later. I was in my late 20s. So I didn't start grad school until my early 30s. And I did go to University of St. Augustine in Austin. I'm a proud alumni of St. Augustine. There's a long story behind how I ended up in Austin. But it had, that story has really it's what's cultivated my loyalty and my appreciation for the University of St. Augustine. They gave me that opportunity that other schools didn't, despite some unusual circumstances. So I'm very proud to be a student or an alumni of St. Augustine. And that was in 2015, I started PT school. I graduated PT school in 2017. I quickly got my first job down in up in Lakeway, Texas, working in a small private practice. Interestingly enough, my first job out of PT school, I was able to join a private practice that specialized in treating golfers. So it aligned with a lot of the past and the history that I had, which I think was also a very important part of my early experience that helped me to one day grow my own business. In 2020, or at some point during the 2017 to 2020 range, I decided to leave the private practice. I felt like I got as much as I could out of that experience and jump into a world of corporate. I wanted the ability to be able to scale or climb up a ladder as a professional. I think it was very important for me. And so I joined Results Physiotherapy. And in 2020, early 2020, I was promoted to clinic director. As soon as I was promoted to clinic director, pandemic happened. And I was supposed to open a new clinic down in South Austin, and it got delayed for several months. But we ended up opening that clinic at one point. And it was a very successful clinic. At that point in time, it was the most successful, we call it the Novo clinic, or a clinic from the ground up, a new start. It didn't take over another clinic. It just started from scratch in the 23-year history of the company. Very, very proud of that accomplishment. And I had a bunch of really, really good people, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that allowed us to be successful in that new clinic so quickly. I went through a lot of issues from that 2020 to early 22 period. We were growing a new clinic for this big company. We were having a lot of successes. And I was also experiencing a lot of what all of us as PTs is going to experience at some point in time. I was feeling the burnout. I was feeling that I was putting extra effort, going the extra distance, the extra mile, volunteering myself for certain issues, or basically I was putting myself out there and running myself a little bit crazy for a company that I was slowly realizing wasn't really that concerned about my health and my well-being. Right? I was putting in so much effort and I wasn't getting much back from it. And it was hard for me to accept that, but it was a real thing. Those experiences eventually pushed me to the point where I absolutely was basically put in a position where I had no other choice but to start my own business. I had been putting off starting my own business for a long time at this point. A lot of it was because of fear of failure. And a lot of it had to do with, my necessity of needing to provide for people at home. But I was pushed to a point where I absolutely had to start my own practice. And I did that in May of 2022. I saw my first patient as a private practice business owner. At the same month that I started my own practice, I also started my terminal degree program at Texas Tech University. I did them side by side simultaneously. I knew that moving into academia was personally what I was more passionate about, more excited about. But I knew my avenue to get there was going to be alongside the ability to start my own practice. Not only so that I could be more successful financially and create that financial freedom, but also for the time's sake. As a private practice owner in the very early beginning, I was able to see half the patients and make more than double the money and create the time to study for my terminal degree program at Texas Tech University. Started the business in May of 2022. In October of 2023, so a year and a half later, I was actually hired as co-faculty at St. Augustine. It's no question about it, it's my dream job. It's everything that I love, everything that I'm passionate about in regard to any profession in general. I feel like when I started undergrad in my late 20s, the fire was lit. There were some instructors that I had, professors that I had in my undergrad, that I started asking that question, is this what I want to do one day? And so it's been a very long journey to get here, and I literally feel like I'm living my dream job. Not only do I get to live my dream job, but I get to nourish my baby, right? My company that I started a year and a half ago, it continues to move. Because of the people that I've put in place, it is still going today, and it's going strong. As a matter of fact, there's so much potential in this company that I'm not really I don't have the motivation or the bandwidth to jump into right now. So being straight up forward and honest with you, my dream job is being a professor at the university. But my baby and some of my history and my love and compassion is in this company that I've started. And I hope one day to have the right person to come in and kind of along partnership with me, see it grow to something maybe even bigger. But that's just kind of a rundown of kind of where I started and where I've come to at this point in time in my career. So let's take a step back. Let's talk about when I opened my own practice back in May of 22, and some of the things that I went through and some of the things that I'd like to share for you that are very important for you to consider. The first thing I'd like to start with is, what is your motivation? And this is one of, I think, probably the most important question that you're going to consider. This is the question when you can ask yourself, what is your motivation? It's going to be the energy. It's going to be the soul of what drives you to be successful. I think that if you don't ask this question enough, you might find yourself in situations where things are feeling heavy, you're feeling down, you've maybe been met with a couple of minor failures, and you're wondering, what is this all for? And why am I doing all this? And if you don't have a clear definition of what's your motivation, you could maybe get lost. You can maybe kind of lose your way a little bit. But if you very clearly have thought about and really locked in, what is your motivation to consider when starting your own private practice? It's going to be that um, thing that comes back, that you remind yourself of what you're doing, and it's going to provide energy. It's going to allow you to accept those no's and those failures and say, I'm just going to keep going because this is what I do it for. Many people, it's around money. Many people, it's about creating a lifestyle that you want for yourself as a physical therapist, as a professional. I'm going to be straightforward with you. Some of those things were there for me, but my big motivation was basically to fight the man. And I'm not joking about that. Like, the heaviness of the experiences that I had as a clinic director for a large corporation was so difficult for me to handle. And not just because of how hard it was for me to see myself working to be so successful and not getting much from it, but because there was actually people above me who I saw as mentors that started to push me down. It started to kind of try to keep me in check and hold me in place. And it was so frustrating and infuriating for me. It became my motivation. I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to show all these people how successful that I can possibly be. And that was my motivation. I'm going to keep going in a second here, but I see we have a hand raised from an iPhone. Is that inadvertent, or do you have a question? Hand went down, so I'm going to guess that was an inadvertent raised hand. But please stop me if you do have any questions along the way. Now, you got to figure out your motivation, and then you also have to think about things. There's decisions that need to be made. And here's what I think are the decisions that you need to make when you're starting to think about opening your own private practice. Number one is your revenue source. By the way, all of these things that you need to decide can be altered. They can be adjusted. They likely will be adjusted. But that doesn't mean you can't make that decision early on in the process. I think one of the things that holds us back from being successful or taking that leap into ventures like trying to start your own practice is not making a decision and just sitting on the fence on a lot of different topics. Because I could see things going this way and it being successful, but man, I really also think I can go this way and it still may be successful. And I'm just going to kind of sit on the fence and teeter-totter over what might be best for me. I think early on you need to make the decision, commit to it, and run with it. Absolutely, you can make adjustments along the way, but make these decisions and make it clear to yourself and your own business plan through your own goals what you plan on doing. The first one is, what are you going to take in for money? Are you going to be a cash pay only? Are you going to accept Medicare? Or are you going to venture into getting credentialed through insurances? Make that decision and make it early. Come up with a pricing structure. What I really mean by this is not necessarily how much you're going to charge, although that is important, but decide on whether or not you're going to charge a rate for being an evaluation and a rate for a visit, or are you going to charge a 15 visit package in one lump sum? Are you going to charge extra for upselling? Are you going to charge for dry needling? Are you going to charge for BFR type of treatments? I'll tell you, my decision early on was very clear. I was going to take cash pay with Medicare. I was going to try to be as 50-50 as possible. And then I'm also going to charge one sum for my pricing. I thought it was very important that I never put myself, because what I wanted to create as a business owner was a structure where I was never put in a position to upsell my clients. I never wanted to say, like, sell someone on a type of visit that I provided for them through some manual therapy or whatever, and then say, oh, let's do some dry needling, I'll charge you an extra 40, 50 bucks. I didn't want to go through that. I thought it was important for the connection that I made with my patients that I keep it simple and go with one set price and keep it at that. And I've been able to do that throughout the last year and a half of my company. End goal, do you want to scale or do you want to only work for yourself? This is something that you do need to decide early on, because what you do in the first few months of starting your own practice is so pivotal or making this decision is so pivotal on what you do in that early part of your business. I wanted to scale it. I wanted to open many clinics, and I wanted to have many therapists working for me. Jumping the gun here, but one of the things I wish I would have done maybe is actually stick to working for myself for a little while longer. I knew that I had other interests, whether that was going to school for my terminal degree and possibly getting a job as a core faculty member. And you can make really, really good money when you work for yourself with very little headache. When you scale, things change, the dynamics change. There's potential to make more money without having actually to provide the services yourself. But then you open the box for many, many other dynamics, like managing people, like dealing with patients who have not had a good experience with an employee that you may have, dealing with more money issues. People are successful, obviously, going in both directions, but I do think you need to early on decide on whether you want to stick as an independent practitioner with maybe one help, right? One other therapist, or are you going to build something that's scalable? And when you think about building something that's scalable, you want to try to make sure that every decision you make can be written down and repeated, so that when you do open that next practice, you have a list of things that were successful that you just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So it's something to try to definitely decide early on. And this probably goes without saying, but I'm not going to go without saying it. Make sure you decide who you want your target population to be. I've heard another person that kind of coaches people on starting their own practices about creating your perfect patient. I'm not a big fan of those other guys who kind of coach people around businesses for many other reasons that I won't get into tonight. But I really appreciated his mindset around the perfect patient. And I think there's a lot of benefit to you guys when you're thinking about creating a private practice. I want you to clearly define who your perfect patient is, or what that person is that you want to treat. A 32-year-old golfer with 3 kids who works in finance, right? Not that all your patients are going to be that exactly, but it helps to give a core about who you're going to be treating. And that's so important when you have to start making decisions about how you're going to market your business, who you're going to market to, and what environments are you going to market to them. It's very, very important that you make those decisions and you use the time and the energy that you have early on that's going to reap the most fruitful benefits. And that's only going to be successful once you've asked yourself who your target population is. I've shared this on almost every presentation I've got. I did it here because it kind of fits with this early kind of what is your motivation and what things you need to decide. I firmly live by these 3 principles. Dream big. I think one thing that a lot of us as new grads, especially out of PT school, but just as humans in general, is we tend to minimize or make our dreams, our aspirations a lot smaller because we want to stick to what's realistic. And in my viewpoint, if I reach, excuse the cliche, but if I reach for the stars, I may land on the moon. Fantastic. If I reach for the neighbor across the street and I make it there, big whoop, right? Like, I feel like people accomplish things they never thought they could accomplish when they allow themselves to dream big. And clear the noise. Don't let other people's voices, other people's reasoning, or don't let them hamper about what you aspire to be and how big you decide to dream. And goal setting, I'm a huge proponent of this, and the research is clear. If you write down your goals, if you clearly write down your goals and you review them consistently, they are much more, there's a much higher chance that you're going to accomplish those goals. I've seen it in action within myself and people that I love and care about. Setting goals and writing them down and keeping them in a place where you can consistently review them might be the most important thing I say tonight. And the last part is taking action. Don't sit around on the edge of that fence and wait for the right time. Don't wait for this thing to happen or that to happen, because the most opportune time is never going to come. You need to just take the steps. leap forward, be fearless, understand that you're going to be met with failure, but just keep moving, keep jumping forward. And it's so necessary to just go through that cognitive process of, I'm going to take the next step, regardless of what the inner you is telling you why you can't take those next steps. Now, moving on, we just discussed things that you need to decide. Here are things that you need to do. Now, this is a little bit more concrete, but this is just like, okay, these are the things that I absolutely had to get done before I started my own practice. The first thing was apply for an LLC. I put RS Corp in there because, you know, there's some, I've been advised that if you're going to have an LLC, if you're going to work for yourself and continue to work for yourself, an LLC is the way to go. If you're going to hire employees and you're going to pay taxes for those, FICA taxes for the employees, then you want to be an S Corp. That's something you can figure out later on. Applying for an LLC or an S Corp, you can hire an attorney to do it. Last I checked, I think like maybe $500 you can get an attorney to do this for you. I started with nothing. And so I literally had, not even going to say the number, but very little money in my bank account. And I didn't have money to spend at all. And I didn't have the means of getting a loan that I needed to kind of get started. So I did everything through research, through YouTube videos, and finding out how to do it. It took me so much longer to go through these processes, but I'm very thankful that I did, because it allowed me to really understand and appreciate the whole process. And if ever there was an issue, and there have been later on, I didn't need to go call the attorney back and say, hey, what's the deal here? Which way do I need to go? Because I already went through the process. So this is something you can do on your own. This is something you can hire an attorney to do for you. If you're going to take Medicare, and if you're going to open your own private practice, I strongly suggest that you get credentialed through Medicare, because it is the most stable revenue stream that you can build or provide. And the means about getting credentialed are not difficult. I did it all on my own through trial and error. It took me, I think, 3 weeks to finally get a deposit once approved through Medicare after my credentialing process. But the whole process lasted about 5 weeks before I started getting paid from Medicare from day one that I started seeing patients. But you do need to start that credentialing process if you're going to take Medicare and private practice insurance companies. Like I shared with you earlier, I decided early on that I was going to be cash pay split with Medicare. Cash pay was kind of like where I made my money, and Medicare is where I found my stability. And I wanted a good mix there. Later on, after a little bit of growth and hiring other employees, and through requests of my therapists, I actually hired someone to get us credentialed through Blue Cross Blue Shield and through United Healthcare. I didn't have the time, the bandwidth, or the desire at that point in time to do it on my own. So I hired someone to do it. And I'll throw in a little bit of a pearl here. If you're going to hire someone to do the credentialing for you, find someone that is based in the United States. And that's through experience. You're going to pay a little bit more. For me and another therapist to get credentialed through those 2 insurance companies, it cost me about $2,000 in total. Through someone here local, they were responsive to my emails. They were on top of things. I didn't have to question any part of the process because they were there. They were immediately responsive, and the process was very seamless. Still took a while, but they were really good to work with. You have a lot of people that are going to reach out to you when you show some interest about, and it's going to be much cheaper to get credentialed through the same insurance companies, but they're based overseas. And based off of experience and friends who've gone through the experience, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. And everyone that's gone through a process has wished they could pay the little extra money to get somebody here local in the United States. But it's something you need to do and do early. The sooner you start the credentialing process, the sooner you can start getting reimbursement outside of your cash pay patients. Choose an EMR. I think this goes overlooked in the early parts of the process. Of course, you can start with, I think Google Docs is absolutely HIPAA compliant. But if you're going to submit claims to Medicare or other insurance companies, or if you just really want something that keeps your electronic medical records really safe, secure, and simple to use, choosing an AMR that can do both in the most simplistic of ways is very important. And again, it's a little bit cliche, but the company I chose was Simple Practice. And I'm a huge proponent of theirs. They're built for psychotherapy, but they actually absolutely are fit for physical therapists and occupational therapists. I can do all of my claims, all of my billing, and all of my notes in one easy, simple spot, all of my scheduling in one simple, easy spot for not a whole, like less than $100 a month for one therapist. Now that I have multiple therapists, it's up to about 400. But it's still very, very cheap compared to your other web PTs and other practices. I'm not saying you need to go with Simple Practice. What I'm saying is that you need to choose an EMR that can do all in one. Because the minute you start choosing, well, I'm gonna use this for my medical records and this for my billing, or maybe tie one scheduling into that, it just becomes a little bit more to kind of keep up with for me. And I think it's important to choose one that keeps it simple and seamless and keeps it all together. But that's a decision you need to make. And actually, before all of this, you have to open a business checking account. This is not something I realized when I started to, oh, and there's another bullet that I don't have in here, but creating a tax ID, which you can do on your own at home in one night. But before you can really start to get any type of deposits from Medicare, for insurance companies, or before you can apply for an LLC, you have to have a bank account, a business banking account. And before you have your business banking account, you have to have a tax ID number. This is not something I realized right away. I had a personal bank account, checking account with Capital One, and then I opened up a second personal checking account with Capital One as my business account. And when I started to go through this process of creating my own business, I realized very quickly, it only made it a headache for me when I tried to use that bank account through Capital One as my business. They need to have a business banking account for a lot of these processes. So that's something very early on that you need to do as well. I use our BFC, which I think has been great. All right, so we talked about things you need to decide. Those are things that you need to do. Here are things that you need to have. This slide is a bit of a joke, but it's also dead serious. Everything you see on this slide is what I had when I started my own business. I didn't have money to lease a building or a private space. So I had a 2003 Saab that the driver front window did not roll up. It was stuck in a down position, and it didn't have radio and it didn't have air conditioning. The Bose speaker that you see there was my radio entertainment. It was necessary for me to get from one place to the other, because I guess I skipped this, but when I started my private practice, I did it strictly as a mobile outpatient physical therapy practice. So every patient I saw in the very beginning was going to their homes, and I did it in my Saab. A little embarrassing sometimes just to show up in the middle of July in Texas, soaking from sweat because of no AC in my car, but I did what was necessary. I started with a backpack that had some dry needles, a mobilization belt, gait belt, and a couple of balance tools. I also had a Theragun that was given to me as an award from my corporation company that they told me was not mine once I started to leave, but just so happened to make its way out of the clinic. So it was just a little tool that patients loved that I brought to try to build that patient buy-in, build that therapeutic alliance. It was a great car. I don't have it any longer. I guess not really sadly, because I was not really sad to get rid of it. But I'll always have this emotional connection to a 2003 Saab, or any Saab in general, because it was my means, my mode to be successful early on in my private practice venture. The main point of this slide is that you really don't need much to get started, right? So you don't need to lock into a lease. You maybe want to. It may be part of that process. You may have money already put aside where you're going to start a little bit ahead of where I was. But it's important for me to convey the message to you that you don't need a whole lot to start your own practice. You can do it with very, very, very little. So much more to say there, but I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm going to move on. And that kind of does, I think, let me go through a few things that I think I did right And then a few things that I wish I'd have done differently. Things I did right, and this was very important, is more than 2 years before I started my private practice, I started keeping a personal spreadsheet of clients and patients that I worked with and contact numbers. Is there a legal issue with that? Possibly. Do I regret it at all? Absolutely not. Because when I started my private practice and I was all on my own, I had a list of 400 names that I broke into 3 levels. Level 1 was the patients I connected with, that if I called them or texted them or emailed them, they knew exactly who I was and they had so much appreciation for the connection that we had as a therapist. I had a level 2, which were people that were kind of there, but not exactly. And then the level 3 were just patients that probably remembered me, but I just didn't build that connection. And I did that level because the level 1s were who I went after right away whenever I started my own practice. And I didn't say, come see me, I have physical therapy. I started my own physical therapy practice. What I said was, great to hear from you. I'm reaching out to you to let you know that I've started my own private practice. I've appreciated us working together in the past. And if ever you have a need in the future, please know that I'm here and here's my contact information. Something that I did right, I was able to get a full caseload in less than 4 weeks. Really in 3, if you count a full caseload of 25 patients, which I was doing at the time, I was doing that within my 3rd week of starting my own practice. I kept my overhead small. So you saw my car. I had the opportunity very early on to jump into things because I started getting money that I didn't think was possible in our world. But I decided to keep the overhead as small as possible and wait and wait and wait. And I'm so thankful and glad that I did that early on. Another thing was I surrounded myself with great people. I mentioned early on that the Novo clinic I opened for Results Physiotherapy was the most successful clinic opening in its 23-year history at that point in time. Well, it's because the people that I was with were people I brought from another clinic. We worked together. We were a cohesive team, and I mean that from the front office staff, physical therapy assistants, and licensed physical therapists. We brought a team that I started cultivating a year prior, came together at this one section, and were very successful. The first 4 people that I hired for BB Physiotherapy and Wellness, my company, were those same people that I started my practice with, or that I started the Novo clinic with, and they're still here today, most of them. One of them is gone. He's moved off to go to PT school. But because I built that unit, because I had people that were showing loyalty to me and I was showing loyalty to them, we were a team that continued to move forward and be successful together as a team. And I cannot underestimate how important they were to my success, what I would consider our success. The other thing was I thought outside of the box. I didn't want to create another private practice, physical therapy private practice that was so similar to every other practice. And the way I did it was, number one, I committed to one-on-one services no matter what. And I'll never have a company that doubles up patients, never. So I committed to one-on-one care. I also paid very close attention to the environment that I created. So the idea around that was, if you walk into my clinic today, it's like 3 small living rooms. We have a couch, a treatment table, plants, some dividers. It's a rug. It's comfortable. It's clean. All of the artwork on the walls are canvases from hiking pictures that I took on some of my backpacking trips. So they're all personal pictures. And it creates this homey, very personal environment that I think separates us from every single person, every other clinic that I know of in physical therapy. That was huge and vital to my success, because when I saw patients, and a lot of patients I saw were people that I saw in other clinics and other environments, when they came to me and they walked in and they sat down, their first experience was they were sold forever. Like, this is the most personal and comfortable experience in physical therapy I've ever had, and they won't ever go anywhere else. So those are things I did right. Things I would have done differently. I said I kept my overhead small, but not long after, I actually hired a PTA, and then I said, okay, we're going to spread our geographic reach a little bit. And so we opened up a small clinic in Westlake, right? My main practice was in South Austin. I opened up in Westlake, and then I opened another one. So I had 3 clinics at one time, and I realized very quickly, like, what am I doing? Like, I wish I wouldn't have tried to, I wish I would have stayed um, in my local area and really mastered it before expansion. Um, because once I expanded, it felt like it spread me so thin that I was losing the personal, I don't know, personableness, but the ability to be personable with my patients, and also um, just that kind of personal touch. It just was spreading me too thin, and I think patients were noticing it. So I wish I would have just focused in a little bit tighter on what I was doing at that point in time and not tried to grow my geographic reach so quickly. I wish I'd have structured my working hours. I did. I said, I can handle this, I can do this. And I worked, sometimes I saw patients 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. So I just took patients in and scheduled them at will. Um, I knew, I said, I'm one of the hardest workers there is. And that's what I was telling myself, right? And I can handle this like other people can't. And the truth of the matter is, a year and a half later, I'm suffering some of the effects of overworking and burning myself out early on in my private practice venture. I wish I would have paid much more attention to structuring my working hours versus my personal hours right when I started. My idea was that I know all business is good business and I'm not going to turn anything down. The truth of the matter is, saying, no, I can't see you at 7 o'clock at night, but I can see you at 3 o'clock the next day would have probably worked. I was just so hell bent on not saying no to not lose business that I sacrificed a lot of myself and put myself susceptible to some early burnout when I didn't have to. I wish I'd have done that a little bit differently. The other thing is, I put a big 3-star maybe on this one because I don't know, but I do think there would be some value if I would have created a website and built a social media presence. I know this is like, my son calls me an old head, right? Like, I am traditional. I don't have any social media. I stay as far away from my phone and computer as I possibly can. I'm proud to say that a year and a half later, I've scaled or built the business that I've built to be successful as it was without ever having a website or ever having to log into any type of social media. I'm very proud of that. All of our business comes from past patients or family members of past patients and one referring provider. And we've been able to grow and scale. So when I put maybe, I realized that there's a lot of benefit to tapping into, having a website, maybe working with someone on trying to create, what do you call that? A marketing plan through like some type of Google search engine, or even just creating social media and trying to reach out to people that way. And I think there's a lot of value to that. But I put the big maybe because I did it without it. And I'm very proud to say I did. That being said, I probably will end up jumping that one day and trying to create that kind of internet presence. But now let's go into negotiating your salary. I have one slide on this, the 5 simple points that I think are super, super valuable for every single one of you if you go to apply for a job right out of PT school, which most of us will. These are things that you need to think about and appreciate. Number 1 is research the salary and the pay range based on your experience and your geographical location. There are many websites, Glassdoor, I think Indeed does it, PayScale, I think is another one, but there are many search engines and websites where you can plug in your area, your expertise, so a licensed physical therapist, and based on your years of experience, it'll tell you a pay range about what people report. It's important to know that before you start a negotiation process with a potential employer, because it matters where they come with their initial offer to you. Where does it fall on that scale? It allows you to think about, how big of a counteroffer do you create, or maybe you stay a little bit tighter. But that's something that's easy to do and something important to do early on in the process. Work to create options. I've had several students, and when I mean several, 3 or more students this year, 2024, that have reached out to me in asking advice about a job offer that they have. And one of the things they say is, I feel like I do want to counteroffer. I do feel like, but this is the job I want, no doubt about it. But they only have one option. They have that one option that they're passionate about and driven towards. And I think that greatly diminishes your ability to negotiate an early salary if you haven't created options for yourself. I think it's very valuable for you to apply to multiple job offerings and positions. Take all the interviews that you can possibly get. Pull in as many offers as you could possibly get, because every offer, every interview that you perform is good experience for the next one. And every job offer you get is absolutely leverage for you to negotiate the salary you want with the job offer that you want. So create the options. Don't be so stuck on your dream job, on what you've wanted, even if it's a job that you've worked as a tech for in the past. Create options for yourself. It's so important. At the least bit for negotiating your initial salary. Ask for a compensation range during early contact. There's nothing wrong with this. So if you apply for a job and then they typically offer you for an interview, usually it's a phone interview, a virtual interview. Sometimes they go straight to an in-person interview. But regardless, during those early contact hours, ask for a pay range. What do you typically pay your physical therapists that have my experience? Get that number from them very early on. Sometimes they'll be very clear for you, and this is what we offer, a number-wise, and sometimes they say it's variable. But it's important to ask that question very early on, because you can't ask it later once the offer is submitted to you. And that hurts your ability to kind of counteroffer and negotiate a salary. So these first three parts of the rules for negotiation are actually preparation type of work, right? Research the salary and a pay range. Ask early on for the compensation range for the employer that you're interviewing with, and definitely apply to multiple places and create options for yourself. Get as many job offers as you possibly can. Now, once you get that offer, you always counteroffer. I don't care how little experience you have. Employers are not looking to hire the next PT. They're looking to hire the next leader. There's no doubt about it. They know, despite what they try to tell you, they know the value of a very skilled and high potential type of employee. An employee that interviews well, an employee that knows their value and knows their worth, is much more valuable to an employer than someone who's just kind of frightful, fearful, please give me the job. This is what you're going to offer me. I'll take it. Because those people are going to be more successful in the clinic. They're going to make that employer more money. Trust me, employers know that. They may try to play that high kind of dominant position because they want to pay you as little as they possibly can. But they also want to bring in who's going to be most valuable to them. And drafting a counteroffer shows that you know your value. The biggest question I get about developing a counteroffer is, I'm afraid that I'm going to get my offer rescinded. That has never happened. That will not happen. And if it does happen, then you do not want to work for that employer. Do not be afraid to ask for more because you might lose the initial offer. It's not going to happen. The worst thing that can happen is they're going to say, I'm sorry, this is what we offer you. So don't be afraid to counter. You need to counter. You must counter. When you draft that counter offer, I like to think that your letter or your email should follow this prompt. Always say thank you and show excitement about the opportunity that they're giving you. State that in so many words or sentences. Then you go right back into saying, I appreciate what you've offered. This is based off of the offers that I've received or where I need in my personal life or where I've been or what I'm expecting, regardless of how you word it, this is where I need to be. So your counteroffer is going to be quite a bit more than what they've initially offered you. Then you go back into showing your excitement, and for these reasons. I can't wait to be a part of your company because I feel like it aligns with my values, and I know that there's room for me to be a very big, important part of this success that this company is going to have. So you started off by saying thank you and you're excited. You threw in what's important to you and where you need to be, and then you backed it up very quickly with explaining why you're so excited to be a part of this company. And by the way, you're saying this in a tense of, I can't wait to be a part of this process, not maybe I will be, right? The offer's been submitted. You're just asking for a little bit more. So you're already a part of the company at this point in time, the way you speak to them. And then you always finish with that kind of terminology of, I look forward to our partnership. I know I'm going to be successful for you. I'm very confident in what I have to offer. I look forward to hearing back from you. So very important to draft a counteroffer. I like the prompts that I just laid out to you. It's worked time and time again for me and for other people that I've been able to mentor along the way. Then you just have to either accept the counteroffer that they've come back with you, or you decide that, no, you want to continue negotiations. I said continue negotiations because sometimes they come back and they say, I'm sorry, this is all that we have to offer in regard to pay range. This is where we start. But there's other things, more vacation time, more paid days off, more money for your continuing education. So there's other things that you can negotiate, not just the pay that you're going to be accepting as a PT, whether it's a salary or some type of hourly wage. So that's my hard rules. I think that can help you to be successful in negotiating your own salary. And then why is it important? Because where you start with your pay right after PT school is going to be exponential for every raise, every job that you get from that point moving forward. The more you get on the early part, the more you're going to get later down the road. It's worth literally that first counteroffer. You may ask for another $2,000, $2,400, but it's worth 10 times that amount or much more because of the raises and the increases that you get off of that. Or when you apply to a different job in a different company, the offer that they're going to offer you is going to be where you're at or a little bit higher than where you're currently making in your current job, right? You're not going to go backwards. No employer is going to expect you to go backwards in pay just to go work for someone else. So it's vitally important to counteroffer and to do it as strategically as possible. I'm running way over time than I expected, so I'll kind of run through this, take home points. When you're starting your own business, dream big, write your goals down, do the processes that need to be made to start your business. And remember, you don't need anything to get started. You can start immediately. You just need to work within your means and take the steps, take the action. And when you're negotiating your salary, be prepared, do your research, create options for yourself by applying to as many jobs as you can, accepting those interviews, and trying to get the offers, even if your mind and your heart and soul is in a specific clinic or option, and always count. The last part of my presentation is just kind of an introduction. It's something I've been working on actually for a couple of years, longer than that, maybe 3 or 4 years. But I'm really excited to say that very soon I'm going to be releasing kind of a mentorship and coaching program. It's still under construction, but there's no doubt that I'm going to select a few people. It's going to be through type of an application type process, but we're going to build a team of people that's going to work consistently together. Me and the people in part of this mentorship program personally, but also as a group. We're going to do individual sessions, group sessions. We're going to talk about all aspects of what it means to be as successful as you possibly can from day one moving forward. There's more information to come. If you are interested in this, I'm going to be sending out some information, but send me an email so that I have your contact at blaise@bb-physio.com. Just let me know you're interested and I'll add you to my list. So when I get information about more of the structure and what this is going to look like, you'll be part of that list and you'll receive some of that information. It will be through an application process. I don't think I'll be able to take everybody, but I'm looking at probably 15 to 20 people that we're going to build a group that's going to be successful, and we're going to create, whether you're starting your own business or just looking to be successful in business, it doesn't matter. As far as for pricing, the only reason I put that in here is because one of the most frustrating things for me as an early clinician who didn't have money to pay all of these coaches and business coaches and PT coaches along the way, I will absolutely not allow people that I want to work with and people that want to work with me, money to be an issue. So I've thought about multiple ways about how this can work. It might be through some anonymous donations, but I'm working this way. This is another way for me to kind of stick with my motivation of kind of sticking it to the man and not be kind of a I don't like when money drives my life, put it that way. I want to work with people and I want to watch them be successful, and money's not going to be a barrier to that. So one more time, if you're interested, send me an email just saying that you're interested in that mentorship program. And one day soon, when I send information out about taking the next steps for launch, you'll be part of that email stream. I said 35 to 40 minutes, 57 minutes. So I failed. But hopefully you got a lot of information from this, or at least some information that maybe organized or inspired you to kind of move forward in certain ways. There's so much detail I can go to every aspect of what I talked about tonight. I'm going to stick around for a while to answer questions. I have time. But if you don't stick around, I understand completely. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for listening to me and providing for me this opportunity to kind of share my experience and speak with you guys.
Thank you, Dr. B. Thank you so much for your presentation. This is very informational. So now we'll open up the floor to Q&A. Anyone can just raise their hand or just start asking any question you like.
Welcome, all of you. You're very, very welcome. And thank you for coming.
I had a question. I can start. For what if, like, at the beginning, they're like not open to any negotiations at all? Is that like a red flag? Is that a common thing? Like, because I've already heard it, like with salaries and stuff, like even just like mentioning it and asking the question, they're like, this is the number that you'll be offered or whatever, you know? I guess, how do you deal with that? Is that where you start going into the other things, or?
Yeah. You know, when I created this presentation and I was so frustrated because I wanted to get in so much in a little bit of time, I started to anticipate what questions would be asked of me, and I was hoping this would be one of them. So thank you, Jordan, for asking that question. Generally speaking, right, if you're applying for a large company that's basically a corporation, this is what they do, right? They lay it out, and this is what we pay our PT grads. This is the number in this location of what we're going to pay and what we have to offer. It's kind of a take it or leave it type of situation. But if you're applying for more of a small business or a private practice, it could be a bigger private practice actually. But if you're applying to like the business owner, right? If that's who's doing your interview process, there's usually much more room for like that person. It's a more personable practice. It's more of a kind of hands-on approach from your business owner, the person who's going to be hiring you, as opposed to implementing the system. But that's not exactly true, right? You can still counter if you're applying for a large corporation, because they do want you, and there is absolutely room. And I can tell you that for sure because I did it with Results Physiotherapy. They wanted to offer me $68,000. I asked for more, and they offered me $70,000. Now that was before I took the job, right? That was when I actually took my early job. They sent me an offer. I said, man, I'm so excited. I love all of this. Thank you for the process of interviewing. And I really want to be a part of this team, but I really feel like this is where I need to be. They didn't give me what I asked for, but they did go up on it. And I know that other people asked for counter offers and they didn't go up on it. So there's room if they truly believe and you interviewed well and you believe yourself and you presented yourself well. Regardless of what other people say, there's always going to be room. It also happened with Select Physical Therapy, which is now bought out by Baylor. They offered me a job. They said it was like a certain amount of money. I can't remember the number. I said it has to be more, and they absolutely offered more. So those are examples of what people will tell you, or even the companies will tell you, we don't have room to go for it. But when push comes to shove and you ask for more, there's always room. There's always room, especially if you prepared, you interviewed well, and you presented yourself well. But when it comes to private practices, when it comes to smaller practices, you better believe that they want the best. They only want to bring in the best. They don't want to pay you the most, but they want to bring in the best. And there is absolutely room for a private practice owner or small business owner to give that little bit extra to get that employee that they see more valuable than some of the other applicants that have applied as well. So there's always room. You can always ask for more. Always. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Doesn't mean you're not going to be met with some resistance and no, this is what we got to offer. Then you make the decision on whether or not you want to go forward. I don't see it as a red flag. I don't see it as a red flag. What I would see as a red flag of if they look down upon you because you asked for more, then they have no inclination or belief about your self-worth. You're just a number. You're just another person that they can't wait to kind of abuse. I hate to use the word, but it feels true to me. Abuse for 2 years. And then when you get tired and burn out and you get frustrated, no problem. Move on, right? So that I see as a red flag.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Oh, maybe I joined late, so maybe I missed the part, but how did you do the marketing trying to bring more patient into your company?
So, Chan, is that correct? Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, that's, yeah.
So I had a unique situation. For actually 2.5 years before I started my own practice, and this is not in one company, but multiple companies, I created a personal spreadsheet where I connected with patients and I knew that there was a connection there. And these patients would see me for a plan of care, discharge, and then later on have another issue and come back and see me. So I saw these people over and again, and we built a relationship, just like all of you are going to do with your patients once you start treating. But I thought very early on, I had the foresight to say, I'm going to start getting contact information. Sometimes I ask the patient, do you mind if I collect your contact information and name in case one day I decide to work in my own practice? Every single one of them, of course they did. And so I started creating those contact lists a long time before I started my own practice. I also threw a disclaimer in there, whether you're on or not, that maybe there's some legal issues. Maybe there's some things where you're putting yourself in jeopardy to get in trouble with your current employer. I don't care. I didn't care. And I'm glad I didn't because it allowed me to be successful very early. By the way, total disclaimer, everything I throw at you tonight is my experience and my personal beliefs. I could have gotten in trouble a lot of times with some of the things they did. I know that for a fact. But I don't regret a single thing that I did because it allowed me to be successful and to be successful early. The other thing I did, Chan, was I had one primary care provider that I worked with in previous jobs, in previous clinics, that kind of had a practice, a medical practice, that I thought, I like the way they do there. Their patients talk really good things about what they do as a primary care physician practice. I kind of want my private practice when I open it one day, I want my patients to say things about me like they talk about them. And so what I did was I recognized that person early and I started to build an alliance with them. And when I started my own practice, they were the first door I went knocking on and said, hey, remember me? I started my own practice. I would love to work with you. And because of that relationship I cultivated for a long time, they have been the only referring provider that I have worked with in the 1.5 years that I've been running a private practice. Is that plan, is what I implemented going to be successful for everyone? Absolutely not. Doing a marketing plan through, Google or social media, building a website, all of those things are what people used to be successful and bring in people all the time. It's actually more the norm. What I did was outside of the norm. But if anything, hopefully my experience and what I've implemented shows you that you can step outside of the box, do things differently and still be successful. So basically, if I can go back and generalize my feedback to your question, is cultivate relationships early, very, very early with your patients and with referring providers, so that one day when you're off on your own, you have people to reach out to, people that you started cultivating relationships long before you became a business owner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Earlier, you mentioned that research salary range based on your experience and your geographical location. how does your previous 10-year of working experience as firefighter and like comes into like negotiating? Does like different field of work experience comes into play?
When it comes to salary and pay, my firefighting experience has zero influence on uh, those dynamics in being working in physical therapy. The benefit of my 10-year career as a firefighter comes with my ability to connect with people, right? Because I saw people, they weren't patients back then. They were just people that I saw an emergency call, right? So we would, by the way, as a firefighter, we responded to medical emergencies. So someone had a heart attack or any type of medical emergency or a car accident, we would respond as healthcare professionals. And I would see them, and I was able to build 10 years of experience of dealing with people in a high intense emergency situation. That experience was vital in me being able to connect with patients as a physical therapist. What did help me in my previous career in negotiating salaries and understanding the finance components was my experience as a golf professional. Because I did play golf professionally, but I also ran a golf course as an assistant professional, but not head golf professional. But there was a lot of sales in reference to pro shop sales. I had a backroom staff, so it was a much smaller scale, but I had high school kids that wanted to work at the country club to clean carts and grab people's bags. And I was in the process of hiring them and dealing with interviews and managing people. So that was vital for me in those points on a much smaller scale. Not vital, it was helpful. A lot of my business experience and the idea around salary is through some trial and error. Some of the things that felt very uncomfortable with me for early on, but I believed in this was the most important thing to do. And one thing good about stepping outside of my comfort zone. Like I sometimes like rush to make a decision if I feel like it's pushing me to step outside of my comfort box. And so some of the things that I share, a lot of what I share for you tonight is just through not necessarily a previous experience, but through a personal experience of going through it kind of cold turkey in those moments.
Got it. So within that negotiation conversation, did any of your previous, I guess, leadership experience and managing experience comes in play when you're interviewing for the salary physical therapy job?
I mean, I think so. I think an advantage I had was when I was applying for my first PT job, I was a 32-year-old adult with 2 previous careers. That by itself, regardless of how you like to spin it, was seen as a benefit to my employers, as opposed to if I was 24 years old and I went from undergrad to grad school and then looking for my first professional job and my first professional experience. So just that I had life experience, I think mattered to my potential employers when I went through the interview process and the negotiation process. However, I don't think, and I firmly believe that my ability to negotiate salaries and gain a lot of job offers had actually moderate to minimal reflection on me being a 32-year-old adult with other experiences, and a lot more influence on how I presented myself. And I see it as an employer now. When I interview new grad PTs and new PT students, it's very easy for me to see this person just gets it, right? They were practicing answering questions with family members for probably the last 3 nights. They didn't come in here just kind of like, I hope this works out, we'll see what happens. But they presented themselves well. They took it seriously. They went watch YouTube videos. They attended meetings like this as students. I could see it very clearly. I can still see it very clearly. So yes, I think my unique situation was beneficial in a lot of ways, but I don't think that it was nearly a majority of the reason that I was able to be successful earlier on in my PT career.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Hey, Dr. Bourgeois. I understand from class that you're a big reader. Do you have any books that you would recommend that influenced you to pursue business or starting your own business or anything of that nature?
Um, yes and no. So again, this is going to be where I typically probably sound a little atypical. 95%, maybe not 95%, 90% of what I read is fiction. And I've actually said this in a group setting before, but I feel like what I've learned through my reading experiences has been so much more dominantly influenced by my reading of fiction novels than reading other people's words about how they were successful in a business. And the reason, and I put a lot of thought and contemplation to this, is because it invokes a creative mind. It pushes you to be creative. So my answer to you, Philip, is that number one, I think reading is pivotal. I think enjoyment reading and fictional reading is just as valuable as maybe reading other people's opinions or other people's self-help type of books. Now, have there been other books that have been recommended to me? Yes. And that were helpful for me? Yes. I'm going to draw a blank on the one that I'm thinking about right now. And if Philip, you'll email me to the email that you see on the screen, I'll send you that book recommendation, because in a position where I feel a little bit pressured, it's not going to come to me. But there was a book that it mattered to me as far as for thinking differently from an employer's perspective to more of a business owner perspective. It challenged me to think in different and unique ways. But YouTube videos have been most influential to me. Just watching other people's experiences, TED Talks on the psychosocial dynamics of not only patient care, but the business aspects have probably been where I spent more of my time when it comes to any type of learning outside of reading. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll for sure send you an email.
Yeah. It's a book with a red cover. I can't remember the author at the time.
I have another question. So in your opinion, should a new grad work for someone before they start their own practice? Or should they just start it and then maybe take some workshop here and there, go to different conference, kind of gain their own clinical skill set, and then continue to pursue the business route?
Okay, good question, Ian. And I think that's actually two questions. Let me take the latter part of your question, if I could, and make that one individual question. Do you need to go through continuing education courses, build clinical skills? Are those things important for you to establish an experience before you start your own private practice? I'm a firm believer in absolutely not. I'm a firm believer that if you have, that you don't need, continuing education to be successful in business, or even to be successful as a practitioner. I really don't think so. I think it's helpful. I think you should aspire to go to continuing education courses and expand your knowledge as much as possible. But the minute you get into a mindset where I think I need this extra little bit before I can take this step into private practice, then you've missed the boat. The second question, which was the first question you asked, was, do you think it's important to work for someone else before you decide to venture off into private practice? And I think, of course, it's dependent on the individual, but no, I don't think it's necessary for you to work for someone else before working for yourself. I think what our field, I think what physical therapy as a profession needs is more people working for themselves. Because right now, the big people are just getting bigger. And it's watering down what we provide as physical therapists. It's greatly misguiding patients in what is physical therapy. And what we need, like I said, is more people that offer more personable service and more personable service and more quality of service. Show people, we need people to show what physical therapy actually is, right? Not a run-of-the-mill type of scenario, but something that is actually impactful in more ways than patients think is possible. I mean, it's no question that, you know, one of the things we struggle with most as a profession is educating the public on what we have to provide and offer. You know, you go stop 10 random people on the street and ask them what physical therapy is. If they've been to physical therapy, most likely it's been through a big company or corporation that double, triple books their patients and throws a few exercise programs at them. If they haven't been in physical therapy, they think more like, what's the difference between physical therapy and personal training? So there's no doubt that education in general public is lacking. Well, that's only going to get worse if we don't start working for ourselves and making our, you know, we don't start having more individual private practice or just people that want to work for themselves. Call it a private practice or just call it working for yourself, whatever it is. We need more of that. We need more of it right now. And you as a new grad have all the skills that you need. I think having a good mentor going through a program, which hopefully I can offer to people one day, is an important part of that process. But you can be successful as a new grad PT working for yourself day one.
Thank you.
Oops.
That's promising.
Yeah, it's exciting too. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out as long as you have, working on the hour and 20-minute mark. It's been a joy for me to kind of share this story with you. I look to connect again with you all soon. Ian, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We will be posting this meeting on our YouTube once the video is ready. And again, follow us on Instagram on bepp.usa. And you can also join the group meet chat to get an updated calendar speaker event. And hope to see you guys soon. Have a good night.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.